Namaste. Psychoanalysis is accused of being dramatic and mystifying the ordinary. But drama is a central part of psychoanalysis. And to explore this, we have with us our psychoanalysis consultant, Mr. Himanshu Vaidya. Namaste, sir.
Namaste.
So, can we start with how drama and psychoanalysis are related?
There is psychoanalysis of drama, and there is drama in psychoanalysis. Psychoanalysis has been accused by those who are outside of it for being uh, involved in drama, exaggeration, uh, mystification, and uh, a very surreal kind of an orientation, quite away from the conscious mind of man, the reality outside, and his will. So this has been an accusation from outside that psychoanalysis is too much into drama. There are two parts of it. There is a drama in psychoanalysis, and there is a drama that psychoanalysis discovers. And the two are different. Undoubtedly, there is drama in psychoanalysis, the drama between the therapist and the patient, the drama that happens inside the mind of the patient and inside the mind of the therapist. And there is a kind of discovery of drama that psychoanalysis does when psychoanalysis discovers something dramatic in the unconscious mind, which is not related in any way to the drama that the two people, because they are together in therapy, they create. So there is a drama independent of the therapy situation, which happens all the time in the unconscious mind of the human being. So that is a point where psychoanalysis discovers drama more rather than creating drama. But yes, uh, there is some truth in the fact that psychoanalysis does create some drama, and in some groups of psychoanalytic therapists, there is this tendency to sort of be very dramatic about what the patient feels, how he is like a wounded hero, how difficult life is for him, and what else, what all should be done for him or can be done for him or the thing can be done for him, and how everyone feels about him. So in those supervision circles or in the therapy circles, training circles, there is a sort of dramatization of the way they have a discourse about the profession. So these are the two elements of uh, drama that psychoanalysis creates and drama that psychoanalysis discovers. Those who are doing more cognitive kind of therapies like CBT, REBT, DBT, dealing with conscious mind, reason, and the will of man, they don't give much significance and don't even discover much of the drama which is there in the unconscious mind of man. But definitely this drama is there independent of any therapy. It is there by virtue of our hardware. It is there by virtue of the way nature and reality want us to be. So it is not a human doing. It is there because of the nature of things. The drama is inside of all of us.
So, is drama outside related to drama inside? And is it a part of our balanced psychological diet?
Very much so. There is drama outside because there is a drama inside. The actions come because of unconscious drama happening inside. There is a dramatist in the unconscious of all of us. And the dramatist uses the surreal to create all this drama. And if we look at our dreams, we can see how dramatic we all are. If we look into our free associations and our daydreams, we can easily see how dramatic we are. So in our unconscious mind, we are all histrionic, we are all narcissistic, we are all psychotic. That is how the unconscious of the man is. Why this is so and not some other way around is a deeper question of philosophy and nature. It is not a question of science. But the fact that it is there is beyond any doubt. That in our unconscious mind, there is a dramatist that dramatizes everything. And there is not only this dramatist that creates drama, but there is another part of our unconscious mind which is hungry for drama. So we are not only drama creators, we are also drama consumers. And this hunger for the drama is also natural. It may be embarrassing, it may be irrational, it may be socially unproductive and therefore condemned. It may be mocked at, laughed at, whatever be done to it. But the fact remains that the nature of reality is this, that there is drama production in our unconscious, and there is a huge drama hunger, a drama consumption in our unconscious. Just take a look at uh, many low-income communities in developing countries or poor countries like India and Africa. It is very common to find in low-income communities many people going to see a movie when they have only 20 rupees in their pocket and they have a choice between eating food and seeing a movie, and they decide to see a movie. Just take a look at how children want to hear stories, and often they will tell you that they won't eat if you don't tell them stories. Just see how many people want only novels as a gift or as something that they cherish. Just look at the way people are hungry to see a particular TV serial or a video show or a film, and how frustrated they become if they don't get to see it. So this tells us how hungry we are for drama, because the drama is like a dream played out in reality. A drama can be realistic, but most drama is not realistic, it is surreal. And it's almost like a dream played out in reality. And we all need to consume those dreams for identification, wish fulfillment, rather, wish fulfillment through identification and catharsis. So there is a very strong desire in all of us to consume drama, and we all also create drama all the time. No wonder we see such a big market for films, such a big market for novels, such a big market for television, such a big market for music and songs. They are all dramatic, they are all unreal, they are all histrionic, they are all narcissistic. And yet we can't live without them because it is a necessary part of our balanced diet. So just as there is a biological concept of the balanced diet, there is a psychological concept of a balanced diet. And this balanced diet may consist of different kinds of thoughts, different kinds of feelings and experiences. And therefore, we see that the drama is not only something to be condemned and discarded and dismissed, it's a very important part of the psychological balanced diet, and it is a human necessity. If the world was sophisticated enough, we would be covering adequate supply of drama to everyone as a part of essential commodities.
So, is it true that psychoanalysis dramatizes the whole thing? Everything, I mean.
It is true to a very small extent. I would say it is true to the extent of 25%, but in 75% of cases, psychoanalysis does not dramatize, it discovers drama. And that drama that it discovers is there by nature. It is the nature of reality. That there is drama in the human unconscious. It is not something that you and I plan and bring about in ourselves. We don't sit and plan that next Monday, 4 o'clock, I will create a drama in my unconscious. Nobody does that. It happens by itself. It is the way our hardware is designed to work. It's completely unconscious, outside of our awareness and control. And occasionally it comes out and influences our conscious mind, and we try to do something dramatic outside. Now, when we say dramatic, it's not necessarily histrionic, not necessarily pathological. We mean something surreal. And there is a constructive and positive aspect of drama also, the surreal also, the whole aspect of aesthetics, the enrichment of life, the juice, the rasa, the experiences of life, and this whole creation of beauty. Beauty in physical terms and in relationship terms and in experiential terms. So there is this whole aspect of the positive and constructive element of drama. And the drama not only enriches, but also many times helps us in catharsis. And this was the ancient function of drama in the Greek times, that drama was seen as a vehicle for catharsis. And that's one of the reasons why most drama used to be tragic rather than comic. Because wish fulfillment and happiness was one uh, purpose of drama, but 75% of the time it was used as a tool of catharsis. And even today, it would be true in many countries that many of the films, they act as tools of catharsis. It's almost like a passive group therapy the crowd undergoes in a theater.
Right. Yeah.
That there are at least 4 or 5 scenes where people cry and they undergo some sort of catharsis by identification.
Mhm.
And they come out light. And two things happen, certain comic things and certain good things they experience on the good side. And on the catharsis side, they are able to let out pain and anger by identification. And that is why they cherish the experience so much. Obviously, they must be getting something from the experience that they cherish it so much and they pay so highly for it. So,
So what is the yeah.
yeah,
Sorry.
yeah, yeah. You asking something? What is the reason?
No, my another question was why should nature have drama in the unconscious? I mean, what would be the reason?
Just before that, uh, when we look at psychoanalysis creating drama, uh, this happens in some ways. For example, the very frame of psychoanalysis is dramatic. This whole idea of two people talking together and one person remaining unknown, anonymous, only commenting in terms of interpretations, not getting in touch outside of the therapy room, coming at the right time and going at the right time, talking only in certain ways, talking in terms of the unconscious, which is so uncommon in everyday discourse. So the very technique of psychoanalysis is dramatic. The conceptual understanding of psychoanalysis also seems dramatic. Like somebody is washing his hands 10 times a day, and we tell him you are suffering from Oedipus complex. And the man is completely lost. How are the two connected? So the man comes to us at 35 years of age, washing his hands 10 times, and we tell him this is because of Oedipus complex, which happened when you were 5 years of age. And the man is completely lost. He can't connect. How washing hands at 35 is connected to a unconscious event at age 5. So the whole concept of the unconscious the whole concept of the psychosexual stages, the whole concept of every school of psychoanalysis, whether it is Freudian, Jungian, Kleinian, Kohutian, all concepts related to unconscious seem very mystical and very dramatic. And therefore, to a uninitiated person, the conceptual framework of psychoanalysis also looks dramatic. That you are afraid that somebody is going to kill you because of a repressed sexual desire somewhere else. So the between the pathology and the cause, the relationship itself seems very dramatic and surreal. So there is a feeling of something dramatic in the conceptual structure of psychoanalysis. The technique of psychoanalysis and the frame of it is definitely dramatic. And the discourse also is dramatic between the two people. So for an uninitiated outsider, it looks completely dramatic. And it is also true that because of the personalities of the two people involved in the process of therapy, some drama is created by the two players, apart from the natural drama which is happening on its own. And this may happen because the therapist is young, or the therapist wants to narcissistically do something outstanding, or he makes a mistake, or out of compliance, defiance, pleasing, displeasing, the patient does something in transference. Or the patient talks to somebody else, learns something dramatic and practices it here. So apart from the classical dramatic personalities of histrionicity and borderline, the very generic nature of this whole enterprise does involve some element of drama. That is one part. And the second greater part is that because we pay attention, we discover the undiscovered drama in the unconscious. And that is the real big part of the drama. So there is dramatic element in psychoanalysis, but more than that, psychoanalysis discovers drama which other forms of therapy don't discover it so much or so vividly. And lastly, psychoanalysis uses this drama for analysis and insight generation through interpretation, which other therapies don't use so much. So from outside, it looks as though we are generating more drama than we are resolving. But the fact is, we discover far more drama and we resolve far more drama than we do.
So, is it fair to say that freedom from the inner drama is our ulterior objective or goal?
We would say that inner drama we can classify into two parts. That inner drama which is constructive and that inner drama which is dysfunctional. So freedom from the dysfunctional inner drama definitely is a goal. Making conscious the positive part of the drama and using it constructively is another goal. But can we really achieve the goals 100%? The answer is no, because it is very difficult to exhaust the inner drama. And this brings us to the point of why the inner drama cannot be exhausted. And this is an area by itself that regardless of how much psychoanalysis try to do reality orientation, and that it is the goal of psychoanalysis. But psychoanalysis itself will tell us that this goal is an ideal which cannot be achieved. So within the psychoanalytic framework, being free from the inner drama and is a goal, but that goal can only be gone closer towards. You can't achieve the goal, just as you cannot resolve the whole unconscious. It is too big, too fast, too creative, right? With too many defenses at work, which we don't have as yet any particular technique or tool to undo the defenses at the generic level. one element also is that defenses also help us, and we don't know that if we don't take use of those defenses, then what else can do the work which they are doing at present. So all these factors put together are there, and the bottom line is that it is the ideal to be free, but the ideal is not achievable within the framework of psychoanalysis.
True. So, sir, how about holistic healing and spirituality? How do it deals with this inner drama, wanted or unwanted?
Uh, if we look at the two different ways of looking at the inner drama, the psychoanalytic way of looking at the inner drama is that there is nothing we can do beyond the point. We can minimize it, but we cannot come out of it. And this brings us to this whole ideal that Freud talked about, where id is, there ego shall be. So where the drama is, there the reason shall be. That is an ideal. But within the framework of psychoanalysis, it is not achievable. We can only move towards it and take it more as an inspiring idea. Contrast to this, in spirituality and holistic healing, they are more positive about it. That we can be free from the drama inside. And this raises two questions. One, uh, what does this freedom mean? And two, how can we be free from it? So, in spirituality, there are two definitions of what it is to be free. One definition is that the drama continues, but we are unaffected by it. We can observe it and we can put it aside. So we don't have transformation at the level of generation, but we have transformation at the level of the generated drama taking effect in our thoughts and behavior and our feelings. So we develop an observer capacity where we can see the drama as it is and we can separate the drama from wherever it has tried to fuse itself with. So that is one definition of freedom from drama, which is really speaking freedom from the effect of drama, not really freedom from drama at its genesis. But in a practical applied sense, there is definitely a freedom. Both. I'm saying practical applied sense, both outside and inside. So at the level of conscious mind, there is no effect of drama. We can separate the drama, and drama cannot have any overwhelming effect in the conscious mind. That is one way of defining freedom. Second way of defining freedom is that you are able to effect transformation at the level of genesis itself. That the drama is not created in the first place in the unconscious, which means a complete purification of the unconscious, and in spiritual language, a complete purification of the chakra. Because behind the drama, there always is desire.
A complete purification of
Chakras.
Right.
The the energy vortex centers that spirituality talks about, particularly the Indian and the Tibetan spirituality. So the point there is this, that what is behind this drama? They say behind this drama is desire. That what is being satisfied through the drama, it is basically desires. And if you can have a cessation of desires, there is no need for drama, because the drama is a tool to satisfy desires. So the whole point revolves around the cessation of desires. And then it turns into a whole science of how does desire work and what can be done to master desire or overcome desire. That would be like a super therapy at its most elemental levels. So that is the kind of super therapy that spirituality tries to attempt. And what spirituality does is this. It tries to use drama without condemning it as a positive tool to be free from drama. So spirituality uses drama, particularly the Indian type. It uses drama in various forms. It is used in mythology. It is used in spiritual practices, particularly the idol therapy or idol worship, as people call it. In idol therapy, a huge amount of drama is used in the relationship between the person, the worshipper, or the sadhak, the aspirant, and the personality that the idol represents, with whom the person gets into a relationship. Then there is a very different technique called Avishkar, where the person actually wears the costumes and enters into a dramatic situation. It's almost like a one-man psychodrama. And often the psychodrama is revolving around a spiritual personality or a historical personality of the past, or maybe even mythological personalities, or maybe even uh, suprahuman personalities indicated by the spiritual literature. So that is used, and then there is use of this complete area of mantra and visualization. Holistic healing is used to reduce the power of the difficult parts of the personality, the blockages, the fixations. And if the psychosomatic problem is there, that is used to heal the psychosomatic problem. And if it is not there, then to reduce the load in the astral body and in the emotional body, so that one can more quickly move towards a freedom from desire as much as one can. Not that anybody achieves it overnight, but the more uh, representative situation is that people are not free completely from desire, but they achieve a substantial freedom from desire. Say 50%, 60%, 70%, that is the kind of freedom that they achieve. And they, after a few years of practice in the spiritual and holistic healing area, if they compare what they were 3 years before and what they are 3 years now, hence, in 3 years, they themselves see how much they are free from desires and how much they are uh, still in desire, and that freedom that they gain is substantial. Contrast this with the control group, which is not doing any spiritual or holistic healing practice, and who are exactly like what they were 3 years ago. So this is like easy to empirically verify ongoing experiment in the open laboratory of the world, that the spiritual and holistic healing techniques do help you to be substantially free from drama and desires.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, just sharing something like there was a person who had come for therapy, and the main criteria was that the therapist has to be spiritual or religious.
Oh,
Maybe that is how, I mean, both go hand in hand.
yes,
I think
I also recollect one incident when somebody known to me was looking out for a therapist, and that person had a similar kind of prescription, that he would not like anybody who would annul or negate completely or dismiss or criticize or use the authority position to just destroy the spiritual beliefs that he held sacred.
right. Well, today we have discussed this very interesting and an important, I would say, topic. And we would wait for your comments. You can write to us at hvindia@gmail.com. Until then, take care. Namaste, sir.
Namaste.